You can have a great product, years of experience, and still struggle to make the sale. And when that happens, most business owners think that it's an issue with their marketing tactics. So they launch a new website or kickstart a social media campaign or even discount their prices. But in my experience, in a long time doing marketing, the real problem is much more foundational. The real problem is that customers just don't believe the things they need to believe to say yes to that product or service. Which leads to the most useful question I found in all of marketing, which is, what does my customer need to believe in order to buy? This question is especially useful when you know a lot about your topic. Expertise gives you thousands of things you could say. You know all the technical details, the specifications, the nuances, the exceptions. And that expertise is great because it allows you to create a truly effective product. But that same expertise can be a drawback because it makes it difficult to market that product. You sit down to write and you draw a blank, or you try to explain everything all at once. I first encountered this concept through the world of direct response copywriting. So copywriters sell through the written word. Unlike salespeople sit with a prospect and they're able to answer objections in real time. Copywriters need to write something that goes out into the world, meets a cold prospect, and leads them step by step back to becoming a customer. And belief is required for this. The great copywriter Eugene Schwartz, in his book Breakthrough Advertising, says it simply: belief is the goal. Schwartz knew that belief had to precede the sale. And the story of a carpet cleaner named Joe demonstrates how this works. In the 1990s, a carpet cleaner named Joe from Ohio was struggling to grow his business. He tried all the obvious things like cost cutting, discounts, special offers, but none of it was making a dent. Sure, the discounts brought him some customers, but one, they weren't very good customers. They never bought again. And two, you might have been in this situation where you offer a discount and it really cuts into your profit. So Joe was struggling. But he eventually realized that he misdiagnosed the problem. The problem wasn't the price was fine. The problem was that the residents of his town, who he was sending this mail into their mailboxes, they did not believe that cleaning their carpets was very important. They thought that just vacuuming was enough. They didn't realize all the dirt that's still left behind and how that can cause sickness and have a negative impact on your indoor air quality. And they didn't understand, once they had their carpets cleaned, how to judge whether or not that company did a good job. So once Joe realized this, he completely changed his marketing approach. Joe began educating his town's residents. He sat down and wrote material that argued for why you should clean your carpets, how often to have them cleaned, and how to choose a competent provider. He stuck that material, not the coupons, in the envelopes and mailed those envelopes to the town's residents. They read it, and once they realized what was at stake, Joe's phone started to ring, and the rest is history. He had a very successful company. And the reason is those coupons were aimed at the wrong problem. The problem wasn't the price. The problem was that this town's residents were missing a set of beliefs. One way to think about belief building is as a sophisticated form of objection handling. We mentioned objection handling a minute ago when talking about that salesperson. That salesperson typically handles objections at the point of sale pretty related to the sale. Questions like, I don't know if I'm going to be there for delivery, or this pricing plan, and it doesn't really work for me. What can you do? But there are objections that your prospects have before they've even heard of you, far before they get to that point where they're actually considering making a purchase. And those objections are what belief building targets. So belief building, which you do through your marketing material, meets that cold prospect where they are and answers those objections. But these objections are different. There are objections like, do I even have a problem? Is this really something to do anything about? What are the different solutions that are out there? What are the different ways I can solve this problem? So they're not at the point of sale, they're further out. And what your belief building material does is meet them where they are, answer those objections, build the proper beliefs, and lead them to that final conversation about whether or not they're going to buy. So belief building gives you the buy-in that you need before you ask someone to buy. There's another benefit of belief building that I have to point out to you, and it's that it helps you answer the question, who is my customer? A timeless marketing question. So when we're doing targeting, when we're thinking about, okay, who are we going after? Often the advice tells you something along the lines of demographics. So it's, okay, my customer is a woman who's 35 years old and she drives a green Toyota. And that's fine. But notice the new questions we're able to ask looking at this through the lens of belief building. We might ask, what beliefs does my prospect need to have before they hit our website? Or how far out are we going after? What beliefs are we going to instill? And what beliefs are we deciding that someone already needs to have before they work with us? And how do we know when it's time to expand into colder and colder territory belief-wise and start to educate more people? So you notice that belief building does not just help you create a better argument and warm people up so that they're ready to buy. It also helps you answer the question, who are we asking to buy in the first place? A key to success now with belief building. You've heard me mention two terms, education and argument. And it's really important to be clear on this. The education is nested within the argument, and you need both. And I'll give you an example to explain why. So let's say you've been in this situation where you're sitting with a friend and you get into a little debate about a topic. Maybe it's a spicy political topic. And you've clearly read more on this topic than your friend has. And because of this, it's tough to win your friend over to your point of view. You almost want to say, hey, just take this book and then let's have a conversation. That way we can have a fruitful conversation because we're both on the same page. And so it's the same thing with your marketing content and belief building. You have a way of doing things. You have a way of delivering your product or service, and you want to build an argument around it. You want to argue for that way of doing things. In order for that argument to really sink in, you need the prospect to have some certain level of education. So that's what your marketing material becomes. It becomes that educational material that makes your argument make sense. It shows why your argument matters. And if you have the education but not the argument, one of two things is probably going to happen. One, your prospect is going to say, okay, interesting, and then just walk away. Or two, they're going to say interesting and then buy from your competitor who is making that argument. So you need both, education and the argument. So to recap, we asked that question, what does my customer need to believe in order to buy? You now know that your job is to build those beliefs. And you do that using a discipline that's been around for thousands of years, argumentation. Through argumentation, you create your reasoning. You come up with those claims that you need to make, those key claims, and you back those claims up with proof or evidence. You decide which type of evidence to use. Maybe use more left brain type of evidence like stats and data and charts. Maybe use more right brain type of evidence like metaphors and stories. Now, through doing this, through making your case, you build those beliefs in the mind of your prospect. This does not guarantee they're going to say yes. They might say no, and frankly, that might be the better fit for some people. But when you do this, at least they understand your argument and they have the freedom to say yes or no. It's also important to distinguish this approach, belief building and argumentation, from the more common marketing approach out there, which I call psychology hacking. Argumentation engages with your prospect's reasoning mind. You want them to weigh the evidence and decide for them. Psychology hacking, where you're spiking dopamine and leveraging scarcity and cognitive biases, you're pressing their emotional hot buttons, that's trying to bypass your customer's agency. And so not only does argumentation work better in the long term, in my experience, and bring you better customers, ones that buy from you again and refer you and really care about what you're doing, it's also the more ethical approach as well, because you're engaging that prospect's free will instead of trying to bypass it. So before you write that headline, create that new content piece, or discount your price, ask that question, what does my customer need to believe in order to buy? It really is a game changer. So if you want examples of belief building in action, make sure to read my book, Simple Marketing for Smart People. I co-authored it with Tiago Forte. And you can find that at simplemarketingbook.com in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. I'm Billy Bross. Thank you.